Violet Harlow gazed at the shining skyscraper that contained Thorne Industries, her heart racing in her chest. 8 years. It had been 8 long years since she had last stepped into this part of Manhattan. She straightened the lapel of her tailored navy suit and glanced at her reflection in her compact mirror. At 30, she hardly recognized the person she had become. The once naive art student, forever marked by paint-stained fingers, had vanished. A woman with sharp, assessing eyes and a smile that seemed to linger just out of reach took her place. "Mom, are we running behind schedule?" The voice next to her drew her back to the present moment. Archer, her 7-year-old son, gazed up at her with those striking blue eyes, a mirror of his father's gaze. "Absolutely not, darling. We are perfectly punctual." Violet gently wove her fingers through Archer's sandy blonde locks. "Do you recall what I shared with you? This meeting holds significant importance for my mother's new position at Thorne Industries," Archer proclaimed. "Did you work before I was born?" "Indeed," Violet replied, her throat tightening. What she had kept from him was that Thorne Industries was owned by his father. A father unaware of his own existence. "Prepared?" Archer nodded, and Violet gently grasped his small hand as they stepped through the revolving doors. The lobby mirrored her memories perfectly, a blend of glass and steel exuding a chilling elegance. Memories surged through her, overwhelming and relentless. She had initially stepped through these doors as a 22-year-old art consultant, brought on to curate the company's vast art collection. It was in this very place that she had encountered Dexter Thorne for the first time, the 31-year-old CEO who had taken over the company from his father. "How can I assist you today?" The receptionist's voice pulled Violet abruptly from her reverie. "Absolutely." Violet Harlow addressing Mr. Richmond. "I have a scheduled meeting at 10. The receptionist's fingers glided effortlessly over her keyboard. "Indeed. Miss Harlow. Mr. Richmond is looking forward to your arrival. 42nd floor." Violet gave a subtle nod. "Thanks a lot." As they ascended in the elevator, Archer leaned his face against the glass, observing the city diminish below them. Violet shut her eyes, allowing herself to drift back to the moment she first encountered Dexter. The setting was an art auction. She was there to place a bid on a piece for a client when she noticed him from across the room, tall and impeccably dressed, exuding a presence that effortlessly commanded attention. After he had outbid her client for a Rothko piece, she approached him, resolute in her intent to negotiate. "$60 million for a Rothko," she declared, blocking his way. "You have paid at least $15 million more than necessary." He gazed at her with those striking blue eyes, initially filled with surprise and then shifting to amusement. "Indeed, you are." Violet Harlow, art advisor for Matthews Gallery. Dexter Thorne. He reached out his hand, and as she grasped it, an undeniable spark surged between them. "I'd gladly invest twice as much for the perfect piece." 3 weeks later, he had brought her on board to curate for Thorne Industries. Half a year later, they found themselves entangled. A year later, they exchanged vows in an opulent ceremony that captured the attention of every prominent society magazine. The elevator chimed, snapping Violet back to reality. As they emerged onto the executive floor, Violet braced herself for what lay ahead. It had been 8 years since she last laid eyes on Dexter, not since that stormy night when everything unraveled. "Miss Harlow." A man in his mid-40s walked toward them, his hand outstretched. "I am Elliot Richmond, the head of acquisitions. I appreciate your presence here today." "I appreciate the opportunity, Mr. Richmond," Violet said, extending her hand for a shake. "This is my son, Archer." "It was a pleasure to meet you, young man," Elliot remarked, shaking Archer's hand with an over-the-top formality that brought a smile to the boy's face. "I've made arrangements for Archer to be in our lounge area. Lisa from HR will be there to support him. We have an array of books, a tablet filled with engaging games, and an abundance of snacks to enjoy." Violet paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. That's quite considerate, however. It's all right, Mom, Archer reassured. I brought my book on the cosmos. Violet lowered herself to meet Archer's gaze. I won't take much time. Please be kind to Lisa, all right? Archer nodded, and Violet observed as a warm, inviting woman guided him to a cozy seating area that was visible through a glass partition. Elliot remarked as they made their way to the conference room, your son appears to be quite well adjusted. Indeed, he is, Violet responded. For quite a while now, it's only been the two of us. Raising a child alone presents its own set of challenges. Elliot's voice carried a sense of understanding. My sister is managing it with twins. I'm not sure how she pulls it off. Violet stated matter-of-factly that one does what is necessary for their children. Upon arriving at the conference room, Elliot graciously held the door open for her. With a deep breath, Violet crossed the threshold. 5 executives gathered around the table, yet her gaze was instantly drawn to the man at the head, Dexter Thorne. He appeared more mature with strands of silver at his temples, yet remained otherwise the same. Still strikingly attractive, still radiating that same subtle strength. For an instant, their gazes intertwined, and she discerned a lack of familiarity in his eyes. Gradually, his demeanor shifted from courteous curiosity to sheer astonishment. Elliot was saying, "This is Violet Harlow. The marketing consultant I mentioned to you. Her contributions to Jensen Corbin have been truly exceptional. What is this all about?" Dexter's voice sliced through the room with precision. "What type of game are you engaging in?" Elliot blinked, a look of bewilderment crossing his face. "I apologize, but I'm having difficulty comprehending." "It's okay, Elliot," Violet said with a steady voice, even as her heart raced. "I have previously encountered Mr. Thorne. Have we crossed paths before?" Dexter rose, his palms pressed firmly against the table. "Violet was my beloved partner." The atmosphere grew still. Elliot stared at them, his mouth hanging open. "I truly had no idea. Your surname?" "After the divorce, I reverted to my maiden name," Violet explained, her gaze fixed intently on Dexter. "Everyone out," Dexter murmured softly. When there was stillness, he elevated his voice. At this moment, the executives hurriedly rose, collecting their tablets and documents as they made their way out of the room. Elliot lingered at the threshold, casting an apologetic glance at Violet before gently shutting the door behind him. For an extended pause, Dexter and Violet simply gazed at one another. After 8 long years, he finally spoke, his tone unexpectedly gentle. "After 8 years of silence, you stroll into my company with deceitful intentions?" "I didn't lie about anything," Violet responded. "Elliot reached out to me after reviewing my portfolio. It wasn't until after our first meeting that I realized he was part of your team." "So, you didn't consider bringing it up at that time? Would you have chosen me if you had known?" Dexter's laugh was grating. "Absolutely not. Thus, your answer is clear." Violet placed her portfolio on the table with a sense of purpose. "In addition, my work clearly demonstrates my abilities. The Jensen campaign saw a remarkable 22% increase in their market share." "I don't care if you brought the dead back to life," Dexter snapped. "You vanished for 8 long years, Violet. Silence prevails, with no calls or letters to break it. You simply disappeared. After you told me to leave your life," Violet reminded him, her own frustration finally breaking through her voice. "Following your accusations of actions I would never consider. After you discarded me as if I held no value. You stepped outside," he responded. "You didn't even make an effort to save our marriage." "Struggle." Violet let out a harsh laugh. "You arranged for security to remove me from our home under the cover of darkness. Our accounts have been frozen. You had your attorneys deliver divorce papers to me during my parents' funeral. What was I meant to confront Dexter about?" A brief glimmer of an emotion, maybe regret, passed over his features, but it was swiftly overshadowed by the icy facade she recalled from their last moments together. "What brings you here, Violet? Is that so?" Violet squared her shoulders. "For the position. Despite what you may believe, not everything revolves around you, Dexter." Just as he was about to reply, a knock echoed at the door, and it swung open to unveil Lisa from HR, her expression tinged with regret. "I apologize for the interruption, Mr. Thorne, but—" "It's all right, Lisa," Violet said, glancing back toward the door. "Is everything all right with Archer?" "He's perfectly all right," Lisa reassured her. "He was simply curious about how much longer you would be." "I'll be right out," Violet assured. As Lisa shut the door, Violet glanced back to see Dexter gazing at her with a peculiar look. "Archer," he echoed. "Do you have a son?" Violet held his gaze without wavering. "Absolutely." "What is his age?" 7. Dexter's jaw tightened. 7. "So, when did you tie the knot again?" "I did not." His gaze sharpened as he pondered quietly. "At the age of 7. That would imply." His complexion drained of color. "Does he belong to me?" The door swung open once more before Violet had a chance to respond, and this time it was Archer himself who peeked his head in. "Mom, could I please have another juice box? Lisa mentioned that I need to inquire with you." Violet managed to put on a smile. "Absolutely, my dear. Another one is perfectly acceptable." Yet Archer had turned his gaze away from her. His gaze was locked onto Dexter, a slight crease forming on his brow as he focused intently. "May I ask if you are Mr. Thorne?" Dexter appeared transfixed, gazing at the boy who mirrored his own striking blue eyes. "Indeed. I exist." Archer entered the room with purpose, reaching out his hand as he had been instructed. "My name is Archer Harlow. It's a pleasure to make your acquaintance." Dexter instinctively extended his hand, grasping the small one with a gentle shake. "It's a pleasure to meet you as well, Archer." Archer inclined his head. "You resemble the man in my mother's vintage photographs." Violet experienced a moment of sheer stillness in her chest. "Archer, why not consider returning to Lisa?" "I will finish shortly." "Understood." Archer made his way to the door but hesitated, lingering for a moment. "Mr. Thorne, do you have an interest in space?" Dexter appeared to grapple with his choice of words. "Indeed. I certainly do." "Me too," Archer replied, beaming with enthusiasm. "I aspire to become an astronaut in the future." And with that, he vanished, leaving behind an overwhelming stillness. Dexter faced Violet, his face a tempest of feelings. "He belongs to me." Though it wasn't a question, Violet chose to respond regardless. "Absolutely. You prevented him from being with me. For a span of 7 years. 8, Violet amended softly. "I had already been expecting when I departed." Dexter's hand slammed onto the table with force. "Your actions were unjustified." "I had every right," Violet retorted. "You clearly expressed your desire to distance yourself from me." "He is my son." "A son you were completely unaware of until just 5 minutes ago," Violet remarked. "A son who has thrived and found contentment in your absence." Dexter appeared as if he had just been struck. "Is he aware? What can I share about myself?" Violet dismissed the notion with a shake of her head. "He understands that his father was absent from his life. That concludes everything." "That concludes everything." Dexter's voice escalated. "Is that everything? I'm not someone who has walked away from my child, Violet. I am his father, and you have kept him away from me. Did you wish for him?" Violet took on the challenge. "Had I revealed my pregnancy to you that night, would it have made a difference?" Dexter parted his lips to reply, only to seal them once more. The stillness spoke volumes. "That's what I believed," Violet murmured softly. She gathered her portfolio. I ought to take my leave. Hold on, Dexter said, his voice unexpectedly rough. Where will you be residing? The plaza, Violet responded. Tomorrow, we take to the skies and return to Chicago. Is it Chicago? Dexter advanced a step closer to her. So, you've been in Chicago this whole time? Is it significant? Violet inquired with a hint of exhaustion. Absolutely, it holds significance. Dexter ran a hand through his hair, a gesture so familiar it stirred a deep ache in Violet's heart, despite her best efforts to resist. You can't simply unleash this revelation and walk away from Violet. It's time for a conversation. We are currently engaged in conversation. Dexter provided clarification regarding Archer. Concerning arrangements. Violet experienced a shiver creeping along her spine. What type of arrangements are we discussing? For starters, Dexter mentioned visitation. He is my son. I possess rights. Violet highlighted rights you never realized you desired until just moments ago. That doesn't alter the reality that he belongs to me, Dexter asserted. I wish to understand him better. What occurs when boredom sets in? Violet inquired. When he disrupts the carefully curated order of your life, will you cast him aside as well? A grimace twisted Dexter's features. Is that really how you perceive me? That I would forsake my own child? You left me behind, Violet reminded him. Your spouse. That was unusual, Dexter remarked softly. You have deceived me. I never betrayed you, Violet insisted, her voice trembling just a bit. Absolutely not. Yet, your resolve to see me in the worst light was so strong that you refused to hear me out. For a brief instant, Dexter appeared to waver. He shook his head, as if trying to dispel the fog within. Join me for dinner this evening. It's essential that we have a thorough discussion about this. I believe that may not be the best course of action. Kindly, Violet. In his voice, there was an unfamiliar quality that captivated her attention. A touch of fragility. Merely dinner. For the sake of Archer. Violet paused, her uncertainty evident, before she finally gave a hesitant nod. All right. Evening meal. However, Archer will not be present. I won't refer to you as his father until I have clarity on your intentions. Dexter gave a rigid nod. That seems reasonable. 8 o'clock at Daniel's. I will arrange for a car to be sent. I can manage to get there on my own, Violet said as she made her way to the door. Violet, Dexter called after her. She hesitated, yet remained facing away. He appears to be an extraordinary young man. Violet permitted a subtle smile to grace her lips. Indeed, he is. She gently pushed the door open. He is the most incredible thing that has ever come into my life. As she strolled away, Violet sensed Dexter's gaze lingering on her back. The first stage of her strategy had been successfully executed. This evening marks the beginning of the next stage. After 8 years of meticulous planning, of rising from the ashes, of healing the deep scars of betrayal, she was finally poised to reclaim all that the man who had stripped her of everything had taken. What Dexter remained unaware of, what eluded his understanding, was that the dinner this evening held significance beyond just Archer. The matter concerned the papers stored in Violet's hotel safe. Files that could lead to the downfall of Thorne Industries. Documents of immense value. Or at least deserving of sacrificing a life for. Violet stood before the mirror in her hotel suite, carefully adjusting the sleek fabric of her black dress. Uncomplicated yet refined, with a hint of boldness, a gown crafted for confrontation. You look beautiful, Mom, Archer remarked, sitting cross-legged on the bed with a space encyclopedia spread out before him. Violet beamed at the image of her son in the mirror. Thank you, my dear. Are you dining with Mr. Thorne? Archer inquired, his gaze drifting back to the pages of the book. The gentleman of today. Violet's hand froze. Absolutely. What led you to that conclusion? Archer simply shrugged. I overheard your conversation with Aunt Meredith on the phone. You mentioned his name. Violet resolved to exercise greater caution in her discussions. Archer had always possessed a keen eye, but recently he appeared to notice every detail. Mr. Thorne and I need to have a conversation about some matters at hand. Is he the person in your old photographs? The ones tucked away in the box beneath your bed? Violet pivoted to confront her son. Have you been rummaging through my belongings? Archer displayed a sheepish demeanor. Last month, I was on the hunt for my birthday gift. Serendipity led me to the box. He paused, uncertainty flickering in his eyes. Could he be my father? The inquiry lingered in the atmosphere surrounding them. Violet had always anticipated this moment, yet she had envisioned it in another light, crafted it in another way. Why do you ask that? She deflected, perched on the edge of the bed. Archer stated matter-of-factly, he has eyes like mine. When he glanced my way today, there was a look of genuine astonishment on his face, as if he had encountered a specter. The boy's sharp mind had consistently proven to be both a gift and a trial. Violet let out a deep sigh. It's quite intricate, Archer. It seems you often resort to that when faced with a question you prefer to avoid. Against her own will, Violet found herself laughing. You're quite clever, aren't you? Archer acknowledged with a solemn nod. That's what Principal Walters expresses as well. Violet extended her hand to gently caress his hair. Mr. Thorne and I were acquainted many years back. Prior to your arrival into this world. Did you have a marriage with him? Archer continued to push forward. Violet paused for a moment before giving a slight nod. Absolutely. We tied the knot. He is my father. This time, it wasn't a question, and Violet sensed a constriction in her chest. This was not the way it was meant to unfold. Not at this moment. Indeed, from a biological perspective, the answer is affirmative. Why didn't you share that with me? Due to the circumstances. Violet grappled with finding the perfect words. Because there are moments when grown-ups err. At times, their wounds run so deep that the mere presence of one another becomes unbearable. Did he cause you pain? Archer's voice carried a quiet intensity. Violet's thoughts raced back to that stormy night 8 years prior, the harsh accusations, the icy rage reflected in Dexter's gaze, and the security guards leading her away from their home, leaving her with only the clothes she wore and her purse. She recalled the night spent in her car, overwhelmed by shock and heartbreak, unable to contemplate her next destination. Indeed, she murmured gently. He caused me a great deal of pain. Then I have no fondness for him, Archer asserted, shutting his book with a decisive thud. It's not as straightforward as that, Archer. Violet selected her words with precision. Mr. Thorne was unaware of your existence until today. Archer scowled. Why not indeed? When he caused me pain, I chose to walk away. I kept the news of my pregnancy to myself. What is the reason? A seemingly straightforward question, yet the answer is anything but simple. How could she convey to a 7-year-old the complex mix of pride, hurt, and fear that had influenced her choice? How could she reveal to him the evidence she had uncovered later, the corruption embedded within Thorne Industries that Dexter had either orchestrated or intentionally ignored? Violet admitted her fear, a statement that held a grain of truth. Worried he might not measure up as a father to you. Is that the reason we arrived here? So he was able to meet with me? Violet paused, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. She acknowledged that to some extent, but also for the sake of my craft. And, there are certain matters I must address with Mr. Thorne from our history. A sudden knock at the door broke the silence. That must be Lisa, Violet remarked, feeling thankful for the change of subject. She had orchestrated for Lisa from HR to look after Archer tonight, a calculated decision. Lisa found herself navigating the intricate web of Thorne Industries' internal systems. As she kept a watchful eye on Archer, a discrete program on Violet's laptop began the silent task of copying files from the USB drive that Lisa had unknowingly brought along. Violet swung the door open to reveal Lisa, her face alight with a cheerful smile. "Hello, Ms. Harlow." "Greetings, Archer. I gathered a selection of films and video games." She raised a bag aloft. "I trust that's acceptable." "That's absolutely ideal," Violet remarked. "I truly appreciate your willingness to step in on such short notice." "No problem at all," Lisa said, as she stepped into the suite. "Mr. Richmond approached me directly. It seems he might be reflecting on the awkwardness from this morning." Violet offered her reassurance, saying it wasn't her fault. She glanced over at Archer. "Please be kind to Lisa, all right? I won't take too long. May I stay awake for you?" Archer inquired. "Not this evening, my friend. The hour has slipped beyond your typical time for rest. We'll discuss it further tomorrow, I assure you." She pressed her lips gently to the crown of his head, murmuring an affectionate "I love you" before collecting her purse and stepping out the door. As she shut the door, she noticed Lisa arranging her laptop on the desk, positioned perfectly beside Violet's own computer, just as they had intended. The restaurant lay just a brief stroll from the plaza, and Violet intentionally made her entrance 10 minutes behind schedule. Let Dexter be the one to wait for once, a subtle shift in dynamics. The maitre d' guided her to a secluded dining room at the rear of the restaurant, where Dexter awaited her arrival. He had donned a charcoal suit that hugged him just right, and for a fleeting moment, Violet was whisked back to the memory of their first date. "You look beautiful," he said, and the sincerity in his voice took her by surprise. "Thank you," she said, settling into the chair that a waiter had graciously pulled out for her. "Vino." Dexter waved his hand toward a bottle of Chateau Margaux. "You remembered," Violet said, her surprise evident. It had always been her favorite throughout their marriage. "I recall every detail about you, Violet," Dexter murmured as the waiter filled 2 glasses. "Regardless of your assumptions." The waiter quietly stepped back, allowing them to enjoy their solitude in the beautifully decorated room. "Where is Archer this evening?" Dexter inquired, savoring a sip of his wine. Violet responded while at the hotel with a sitter. "It's actually Lisa from your HR department." Dexter's eyebrows arched in surprise. "You have faith in my employees to care for our son, yet you don't trust me?" "I've been acquainted with Lisa for a mere 12 hours, which is precisely 12 hours more than your familiarity with Archer." Dexter placed his glass down with careful precision. "Is that really my decision?" Violet nodded in agreement. "It belonged to me. A decision I reached after you discarded me as if I were refuse, built on falsehoods." "They weren't falsehoods, Violet," Dexter's voice took on a steely edge. "I have reviewed the emails. I noticed the transactions from our accounts to your personal one. $500,000 drained over a span of 6 months. Subsequently, the communications to Jackson regarding the rendezvous in Buenos Aires once you had managed your affairs." Violet let out a harsh laugh. "Did it never occur to you to inquire about it? May I have the opportunity to clarify my perspective?" "What needed clarification?" "My wife was taking from me and scheming to leave with my closest friend." "Your friend," Violet highlighted. "I had only a fleeting acquaintance with Preston Jackson. He was your companion from boarding school, your partner on fishing trips. Throughout our entire marriage, I had perhaps 10 conversations with him." "The emails were fabricated," Violet interrupted him. "If only I had been granted just 5 minutes to present my case, I could have demonstrated my point effectively." Dexter gazed intently at her. "What could motivate someone to fabricate emails between you and Preston?" Violet stated it plainly, "To be rid of me. To create a division between us." "It certainly worked wonderfully, didn't it? You were so eager to assume the worst about me." A flicker of uncertainty passed over Dexter's features. If what you're saying holds any truth, then why not take a stand against it? What could possibly lead someone to vanish for 8 years? Violet savored her wine, weighing her words with precision. When the one you cherish most in life casts you aside without a moment's hesitation, it transforms you. My heart shattered, I found myself expecting and abruptly without a dime to my name. Engaging with you and your battalion of legal experts wasn't precisely at the top of my to-do list. You were pregnant, Dexter repeated, his voice echoing with emptiness. Alongside my little one. You never mentioned it to me. Would it have made a difference? Violet took on the challenge. Or would you have thought I was attempting to ensnare you? Regarding the baby not belonging to you? Dexter recoiled. I would never do that. Would you not? Violet insisted. You thought I could engage in theft and betrayal without any genuine proof. Why not include baby trapping in the list? Just as Dexter was about to reply, the waiter arrived with their appetizers, creating a brief pause in the conversation. Once they found themselves alone again, Dexter's voice emerged, quiet and restrained. Archer appears extraordinary. Intelligent. Balanced and composed. She concurred, unable to mask the pride that colored her tone. At the pinnacle of his peers. Written for a 5th-grade audience. Fascinated by the cosmos and the wonders of science. Just like me, Dexter murmured gently. As a child, I dreamed of becoming an astronaut. Violet acknowledged this with a simple reply. Once, after our visit to Kennedy Space Center during our honeymoon, you shared something with me. A fleeting smile graced Dexter's lips. Do you recall that? I recall it all as well, Dexter. Silence enveloped them, thick with the weight of shared memories and unvoiced regrets. Tonight, Violet finally revealed that he inquired about you. Archer. You've come across some vintage photographs. He inquired whether you were his father. Dexter's fork clanged against his plate. What did you say to him? The reality. Indeed, from a biological perspective, that is accurate. Biologically, Dexter reiterated, his jaw clenching. As though that's the entirety of it. At this point, that's all it is, Violet noted. You haven't fulfilled the role of a father in any meaningful sense. Because you failed to provide me the opportunity, Dexter retorted, frustration creeping back into his tone. What comes next? Violet inquired. Now that you have this knowledge about him, what is it that you desire, Dexter? Really? Dexter reclined in his chair, his face a mask of inscrutability. I wish to understand my son better. I desire for him to truly understand me. I've already lost 7 years of his life, I refuse to let any more slip away. What is your suggestion for achieving that? Our home is in Chicago. Your existence unfolds in this moment. Step aside, Dexter instructed plainly. I will arrange for you to have an apartment. I will cover the expenses for Archer's education. We can establish a custody arrangement. Violet let out a laugh filled with disbelief. Is it really that simple? You believe I would completely change our lives just because you've chosen now to take on the role of a father? He's my son, Dexter asserted, his voice elevating just a touch. He's my child, Violet replied. I was the one who brought him up. I was the one who comforted him during his illness, who guided him through the world of words, who tended to his wounds with gentle kisses and banished the fears lurking beneath his bed. You're simply a master of genetics. The glimmer of anguish in his gaze brought a wicked pleasure to Violet. Excellent. Allow him to feel pain. Allow him to experience just a glimpse of what she had endured. I have rights, Dexter said softly. Rights under the law. Are you implying something menacing? Violet inquired, her tone dangerously soft. I'm stating a fact, Dexter replied. If you push me into a corner, I will take legal action. Considering my resources, who do you believe will emerge victorious? A shiver coursed through Violet's body. This was the Dexter that lingered in her memory from those last days. Chillingly precise, manipulating his influence with ruthless intent. Would you really subject Archer to that? A struggle for custody? I don't want to, Dexter stated. However, I will if it becomes necessary. Violet placed her napkin aside, an idea beginning to take shape in her thoughts. What if I decided to remain in New York for some time? A testing phase. Why not take some time to get acquainted with Archer and see where it leads us? Dexter appeared taken aback by her admission. You would take that action. For Archer's sake, Violet remarked, observing him intently. Only upon your agreement to my terms. What are they? Initially, we proceed with caution. You hold back the truth of your identity for now. First, you establish a connection with him. Dexter gave a hesitant nod. That seems reasonable. What more is there? I'm looking for a job, Violet expressed. An authentic one, not a charitable endeavor. I've invested so much effort into my career that I can't walk away from it now. I'm unable to bring you on board at Thorn Industries, Dexter stated bluntly. It seems overly complex. Violet concurred, not at Thorn Industries. However, you possess valuable connections. All I seek is a couple of introductions. Dexter observed her intently for a prolonged moment. What about the third condition? Violet maintained her focus on him. Complete financial clarity regarding Thorn Industries. If I'm contemplating linking Archer's future with your company, I must be assured of its stability. That's utterly ridiculous, Dexter scoffed. My company stands out as one of the most successful in the nation. If that's the case, you have nothing to worry about, Violet remarked, nonchalantly shrugging her shoulders. These are my conditions. Dexter squinted, his gaze sharp and focused. What makes it seem like the true purpose of your presence? Which game are you currently immersed in, Violet? No game, Violet said with effortless charm. I'm simply looking out for my son's best interests. Are we in agreement then? Dexter paused, a flicker of doubt crossing his mind at her unexpected willingness to help. I seek joint legal custody. Eventually, he added as he noticed the shift in Violet's expression. After Archer and I had built a connection, Violet feigned contemplation on the matter. Let's delve into it. Following the trial period. What is the duration? Violet proposed a duration of 3 months. This should provide ample opportunity for us to determine if this arrangement is viable. Dexter inclined his head with deliberation. Very well. 3 months. He reached out his hand over the table. A deal has been struck. Violet grasped his hand, struggling to maintain a calm facade while exhilaration surged within her. His fingers brushed against hers with a sense of familiarity, momentarily bringing back memories of the man she had once loved, before ambition and paranoia reshaped him into a stranger she could no longer identify. To new beginnings, Dexter declared, lifting his wine glass high. To new beginnings, Violet echoed, clinking her glass against his, her thoughts lingering on final endings. The remainder of the dinner unfolded in an odd choreography of decorum, interspersed with fleeting echoes of their past closeness. Dexter shared with her the story of his mother's passing, which had occurred 2 years ago. The news struck Violet with a deep sense of sorrow, for Eleanor Thorne had always shown her kindness. Violet recounted thoughtfully chosen tales from Archer's formative years, observing the blend of happiness and sorrow that flickered across Dexter's face with every milestone he had not experienced. As dessert made its entrance, Violet noticed that Dexter was starting to let his defenses down. As he beamed at the tale of 5-year-old Archer trying to construct a rocket ship from cardboard boxes, it was a genuine smile, the sort that had previously sent her heart racing. He reminds me so much of myself at that age, Dexter remarked, shaking his head in amazement. My mother often recounted tales of discovering me in slumber, enveloped by a collection of space-themed books and unfinished models. Violet mentioned that he captures your attention as well. Once he begins a task, he perseveres until it is complete, no matter how long it takes. Dexter acknowledged that stubbornness is a trait inherent in the Thorne lineage. After a moment of silence, I would like him to possess my name. And just like that, the moment of warmth dissipated. Violet stated with conviction, that's not on the table right now. He belongs to the Thorne family, Violet. The one and only Thorne. The final descendant of my lineage. He's a Harlow, Violet clarified. That has been his essence throughout his existence. Because you decided to keep him from me, Dexter reminded her, his voice laced with fresh fury. We're not going through this again, Violet remarked, sliding her dessert plate aside. The past remains behind us. Let's keep our eyes on what lies ahead, shall we? Dexter let out a slow breath, clearly working to control his anger. Indeed, you are correct. I apologize. He signaled for the bill. Could you remind me where you're staying? The plaza, correct? A car will be arranged to take you back. That's not necessary, Violet said, rising to her feet. The evening is quite pleasant. I shall take a stroll. Dexter murmured about her independence, leaving Violet uncertain whether his tone conveyed admiration or criticism. Outside the restaurant, an uncomfortable silence lingered between them. I appreciate the dinner, Violet remarked with a touch of formality. When will I be able to catch a glimpse of Archer? Dexter stood with his hands in his pockets, an unusual air of uncertainty about him. Violet resolved to take him to Central Park tomorrow. Beside the tranquil waters of the boat pond. Midday. Dexter acknowledged with a nod. I will be present. He paused for a moment before adding, just so you know, Violet. It's been too long since we last connected. The sudden revelation caught her off guard. After 8 years of meticulously crafting her revenge and fortifying her heart against him, for simple words loomed, threatening to shatter her unwavering resolve. Good night, Dexter, she said, turning away before he could catch a glimpse of the turmoil swirling in her gaze. As she strolled back to the hotel, Violet's thoughts surged with intensity. A portion of her felt triumphant. All was unfolding as intended. Dexter was already providing her with what she sought. The hours in New York, a gateway to his realm, and soon, an entry into Thorne Industries itself. The financial documents her contact had alluded to would soon be accessible. Yet, a different aspect of her, one she believed had faded away, was stirred by the authentic sorrow reflected in Dexter's gaze as he recounted the years lost with his son. He had, after all, recalled her preferred wine. Through his candid acknowledgement of longing for her. Was it possible that she had made a mistake? Was there a deeper narrative behind their separation that she was unaware of? Violet shook her head, dispelling the doubts that lingered. She couldn't allow herself any tenderness now, not when she was so near to achieving her ambition. Dexter Thorne had shattered her once. She refused to allow him the opportunity to repeat his actions. In her hotel room, she discovered Lisa engrossed in a magazine, while Archer lay peacefully asleep in his bed. What was he like? Violet murmured softly. An absolute dream, Lisa replied, collecting her belongings. Extremely courteous and highly intelligent. You've truly excelled with him, Miss Harlow. Thank you, Violet said as she accompanied her to the door. Thank you for being here to witness him tonight. Anytime, Lisa said with a bright smile. My laptop is currently processing that software update you referred to, but it ought to be completed by morning. Excellent, Violet remarked, struggling to maintain a calm demeanor. Sweet dreams, Lisa. Once the door clicked shut, Violet hurried to her laptop, eager to see what awaited her. The program was successful, Lisa's USB drive had been entirely duplicated. Tomorrow, as Dexter enjoyed a cheerful day at the park with Archer, Violet would be meticulously uncovering the secrets that Preston Jackson had concealed for so long. Preston Jackson, the eldest companion of Dexter, rumored to have been involved in a liaison with Violet. The man who had vanished without a trace 3 days after Dexter had cast Violet aside. The man, discovered 2 weeks later in a hotel room in Buenos Aires, appeared to have taken his own life. Yet Violet was aware of the truth. Preston was not responsible for his own death. He was aware of far more than he should have been, just as she was at this moment. And that knowledge was destined to bring Dexter Thorne to his knees. Violet shut her laptop and strolled to the window, gazing at the shimmering New York skyline. For 8 long years, vengeance had fueled her existence, her driving force that compelled her to rise each day. Now that it was so close, why did it suddenly feel so bitter? She cast a fleeting look at Archer, who lay in peaceful slumber, blissfully ignorant of the tempest brewing in the shadows. Was she making the right choice? Could her quest for vengeance finally grant her the tranquility she yearned for? Or would it merely lead to further losses, with Archer at the forefront? After 8 long years, a flicker of doubt finally crept into Violet's mind. In the bright embrace of midday, Central Park shimmered with life as Archer dashed forward, captivated by the tiny sailboats gracefully navigating the surface of the pond. Violet observed him from her seat on the bench, her heart weighed down by the revelation she had unearthed in Lisa's files the previous night. He truly has a passion for space, doesn't he? Violet recognized Dexter's voice without needing to turn around. As soon as he was able to speak, she responded while he sat next to her. Dexter wore jeans and a sweater, a stark contrast to his typical corporate attire. He appeared more youthful, resembling the man she had originally fallen for. "Did you inform him that I would be here?" he inquired, his gaze fixed on Archer with keen interest. "Absolutely. He is aware that we are getting together with a friend of mine." Violet paused, uncertainty flickering in her mind. "Dexter, before we head over there, I need to discuss something with you." "What is it exactly?" Violet inhaled deeply. "I discovered something in the documents I retrieved from Lisa's USB drive." Dexter tensed up. "Excuse me, what did you say?" "Preston didn't take his own life, did he?" Violet inquired softly. Dexter's complexion faded to a ghostly hue. "What do you mean by that?" "I possess the emails, Dexter. The genuine ones, not the imposters someone forwarded to you." Preston unearthed a revelation within the South American division of Thorne Industries. Unlawful extraction activities, breaches of environmental regulations, and corrupt payments to officials. Violet observed his expression intently. He was definitely going to reveal the truth, wasn't he? "That is the reason he reached out to me." Dexter rose suddenly. "This is utterly ridiculous. If you're attempting to manipulate me." Violet interjected, "I'm not. I seek to grasp the true nature of events that unfolded. On the very day you cast me aside, Preston reached out to me with this." She raised her phone, revealing an email she had concealed for 8 long years. "He was cautioning me, Dexter. He sensed that someone was orchestrating a scheme to make me the scapegoat." Dexter grasped the phone, his hands quivering ever so slightly as he absorbed the words on the screen. "Become the perspective through which someone views the world. Be wary of everyone, even D. Tomorrow, I have a meeting scheduled with the whistleblower. We'll reach out when it's secure. Eliminate this. Exist." "He never called," Violet murmured. 3 days later, he was discovered in Buenos Aires. "And I found myself alone, carrying a life within me, yet feeling empty." Dexter slumped onto the bench, his face pale and drawn. "I did not. I have never." "What do you mean by never?" "Absolutely not. Or perhaps it was never ordered." Violet's voice was unyielding. "I would never have hurt Preston," Dexter said, his voice thick with emotion. "He felt like family to me." "So, who was it that did?" Dexter swept his fingers through his hair. "It could only be Malcolm. My commanding officer from that time. Violet remembered your mother's cousin." The individual who essentially took on the role of your guardian following your father's passing. Indeed. He managed our operations in South America. If Preston discovered something. Dexter gazed at her, anguish reflected in his eyes. Violet, you must trust me. I was unaware. But you thought I had betrayed you, Violet said, the pain still fresh. You thought I was taking from you, betraying you with your closest companion. You discarded me without a moment's hesitation. I was presented with evidence, Dexter murmured softly. Violet clarified that you were only shown what Malcolm intended for you to see. What could be more believable than the harsh reality that the person who nurtured you and whom you entrusted with your business was deceitful? Archer's laughter echoed over the pond, capturing their attention. With a particularly strong push, he succeeded in getting one of the boats to move. How do you plan to utilize this information? Dexter inquired softly. Violet pondered that very question throughout the night. Her initial strategy was well defined. Uncover the corruption within Thorn Industries, tarnish Dexter's reputation, and strip him of everything he once took from her. After 8 years of dedication and hard work, she was finally on the brink of achieving her goal. Yet, as she observed Archer's joy and Dexter's authentic shock and sorrow, she felt herself beginning to falter. I'm not sure, she confessed. A part of me still yearns to reduce your universe to ashes. I can't say I would hold it against you, Dexter murmured gently. I let you down, Violet. Let us down. His confession took her by surprise. The Dexter she remembered would never have taken responsibility so easily. Mother, observe. Archer beckoned, his enthusiasm palpable as he waved with fervor. May I present my boat to Mr. Thorne? Violet paused for a moment before giving a slight nod. Proceed. Dexter stood as Archer approached, a cautious smile gracing his lips. Greetings, Archer. What a remarkable vessel you have. It's the quickest one, Archer proclaimed with pride. I discovered that it's essential to position it perfectly in relation to the wind. Clever observation, Dexter remarked, bending down to meet Archer's gaze. Back in my day, I raced boats in this very spot as well. Is that so? Archer's eyes sparkled with curiosity. Did you emerge victorious? At times, Dexter confessed. Yet there was this one kid, Tommy Brennan, who consistently managed to outshine me. What actions did you take? Dexter shared how he observed the method of launching the boat, analyzed the technique, and then dedicated himself to practice until he improved even further. Archer acknowledged with a solemn nod. That's what my mother always says. Engaging in consistent practice and keen observation enhances your skills in any endeavor. Your mother possesses great wisdom, Dexter remarked, looking up at Violet with a gaze that held a hint of admiration. Care to give it a shot? Archer extended an invitation to Dexter, presenting his boat. The modest act, this slight offering of faith, appeared to engulf Dexter. He took a deep breath before responding, I'd be honored. Violet observed them approaching the pond's edge, Dexter hanging on Archer's every word as he detailed his launching technique. A sensation constricted within her chest, not quite pain, but rather a poignant longing for what could have been. For an hour, she sat on the bench, watching them as they raced boats, shared laughter, and engaged in lively discussions about space, science, and baseball. Archer, typically cautious around unfamiliar faces, appeared inexplicably attracted to Dexter, evoking a mix of warmth and fear within Violet. It felt as though a fragment of his being acknowledged his father, even though they had never crossed paths. Upon their return to the bench, Archer's cheeks glowed with exhilaration. Mom, Mr. Thorne is also acquainted with Captain Nova. He possesses every comic, including the elusive ones. Is that really the case? Violet responded, arching an eyebrow at Dexter. There are certain things you just never outgrow, Dexter remarked, a self-deprecating smile playing on his lips. Archer, may I have a moment to speak with your mom privately? Archer glanced back and forth, a newfound awareness dawning upon him. Is it about adult matters? Indeed, Violet has confirmed. Why not check if you can surpass your record for the quickest crossing? As soon as Archer was out of earshot, Dexter faced Violet, his demeanor serious. I must correct this, Violet. In what way? Violet inquired. The past 8 years are irreversible. Dexter conceded. However, I am willing to accept accountability for the events that transpired. Regarding Malcolm's actions taken in my name with my company. Are you really willing to gamble with Thorn Industries? Violet harbored doubts. Your complete legacy. What heritage? Dexter inquired with a sharp edge to his voice. Is this a business founded on deceit? A wealth tainted by violence? What sort of precedent would that establish for Archer? Violet observed him intently, probing for any hint of dishonesty, yet discovering nothing but determination. What precisely are you proposing? I need assistance, Dexter stated plainly. Assist me in organizing my business. We will reveal the truth about Malcolm, rectify any wrongs caused by our actions, and overhaul our entire approach if necessary. He took a moment to stop. I refuse to let my son slip away from me once more, Violet. I refuse to be the one who allows this to occur any longer. What makes you trustworthy? Violet took on the challenge. Following all that has transpired. As you are aware, Dexter responded. The authentic version of myself, not the individual I transformed into when I allowed fear and desire for success to obscure my clarity. He cautiously extended his hand toward hers. It seems that a part of you still holds some concern, otherwise, you wouldn't be engaged in this dialogue. You would have immediately taken your findings to the media. Violet kept her hand where it was. I arrived here seeking justice, Dexter. Then assist me in delivering it, he implored. The correct approach. Not a retribution that inflicts pain on all, including Archer, but a resolution that could potentially mend some of the scars. Just as Violet was about to reply, her phone began to ring. Gazing at the screen, she furrowed her brow. This is Lisa from the HR department. How peculiar. She responded, her heart freezing at Lisa's desperate tone. My sincerest apologies, Miss Harlow. I'm not sure how it occurred, but it seems someone gained remote access to my computer last night. Every one of my files was accessible, including the personnel files for the executive team. And now it seems everything has been erased. IT has indicated that it appears to be a targeted attack. Violet's gaze darted to Dexter. Did anyone inquire about those particular files? That's the thing, Lisa remarked, her voice trembling. Just yesterday, Mr. Richmond inquired about the old files belonging to Malcolm Thorne. He mentioned that he had to look over something from 5 years back. Elliot Richmond? Dexter inquired, having caught wind of the conversation. Who is in charge of acquisitions? Violet's thoughts surged with intensity. Lisa, do you know where Elliot is at the moment? That's the reason I reached out, Lisa remarked. He has just emptied his office. Security reported that he departed in a rush approximately 20 minutes ago. Dexter had already risen to his feet. He referred to Malcolm's protégé with a grim expression. They have always shared a deep bond. A dreadful understanding washed over Violet. If he realizes we're onto them. They both glanced around for Archer, but the area by the pond where he had been playing was deserted. Archer. Violet's voice trembled as she called, a wave of panic swelling in her throat. Archer. Dexter was in motion, his eyes darting across the surroundings. Security, he commanded into his phone. I require a team at the Central Park boat pond immediately. My son has gone missing. Violet dashed around the pond, shouting for Archer, her heart pounding fiercely in her chest. This was unimaginable. Not when they were so near to the truth. Here it is. Dexter gestured toward a silhouette clad in a dark coat, hastening toward the park's exit with a small, wriggling figure at their side. Archer. Violet let out a piercing scream. The man glanced over his shoulder, Elliot Richmond, and hastened his steps, pulling Archer along with him. Dexter raced after them, quicker than Violet had ever witnessed him before. She raced forward, her lungs aflame, fear propelling her with an unexpected swiftness. Elliot approached the black SUV parked at the curb and pulled the door open with a swift motion. Just as he was about to shove Archer through the door, Dexter lunged at him from behind. They tumbled onto the pavement, Archer breaking loose and sprinting toward Violet's welcoming embrace. "Mother," he wept as she held him close. Dexter had Elliot trapped, his expression twisted in fury. "Are you really planning to take my son?" Elliot spat out Malcolm's orders. "Coverage. If you and your former spouse happen to edge too near the reality." With the distant wail of police sirens echoing through the air, Dexter pulled Elliot upright, maintaining a tight hold on his collar. "The truth has already been revealed," he snarled. "It's over between you and Malcolm." 3 months later, Violet lingered in the doorway of Archer's new bedroom, observing as Dexter assisted him in suspending a model of the solar system from the ceiling. Their laughter echoed through the space, igniting a warmth within Violet that had long been dormant. Malcolm Thorne found himself in federal custody, alongside Elliot Richmond and 3 other executives entangled in the corruption scandal. Dexter fulfilled his commitment. He approached the authorities directly, handed over all the information they possessed, and fully engaged with the investigation. Thorne Industries faced challenges, yet through Dexter's openness and dedication to change, the company was gradually restoring its standing. "Excellent," Dexter announced as they completed the arrangement of the final planet. "What are your thoughts, Chief Engineer?" "It's fantastic," Archer declared. "Thank you, Dad." The words resonated deeply within Violet, sending a jolt through her very being. Archer began referring to Dexter as Dad just a few weeks back, after they had finally clarified everything to him. A concise account of their past that recognized the errors both adults had committed, while sparing him from the heavier truths. Dexter locked eyes with Violet over Archer's head, his expression brimming with appreciation. "Dinner is nearly prepared," she remarked. "Clean yourselves up, cosmic adventurers." In the kitchen of the brownstone they had bought together, not as a reunited couple, but as co-parents dedicated to providing Archer with stability, Violet stirred the pasta sauce and contemplated how drastically her life had changed from what she had envisioned just 3 months prior. She realized that revenge was a toxic force that could have obliterated not only Dexter but also herself and perhaps Archer as well. Justice, in contrast, had unveiled a route to healing that none of them had ever imagined could exist. "He's really finding his place," Dexter remarked as he walked into the kitchen. "It seems he appreciates the stability of having roots after all that time spent moving around." Violet responded, "I believe he enjoys having both of us around. It's hard to tell who's more thrilled about constructing that rocket model this weekend, you or him." Dexter beamed, the look appearing far more often now than it had when she initially came back to New York. "Without a doubt, it was him," he confessed. "Thank you, Violet, for providing me with this opportunity alongside him. Alongside both of you." "We haven't arrived just yet," Violet warned. Their relationship was intricate, a blend of friendship and co-parenting, yet the scars of romance ran too deep for a simple mending. "However, we are heading in the correct direction." "That's all I can hope for," Dexter remarked. After a moment of pause, he continued, "The foundation is progressing with the environmental restoration project in Brazil. The communities impacted by our mining activities will receive the support they require." Violet nodded, truly taken aback by Dexter's ability to redirect his efforts towards making things right. She spoke gently, "Preston would be proud." Dexter concurred, saying he felt the same way. "Every day, I feel his absence deeply. I ought to have had faith in him. I should have had faith in you." We cannot alter what has already happened, Violet remarked, the fury that had driven her for such an extended period now merely a faint recollection. Yet, there are lessons to be gleaned from it. She passed him the plates for setting the table. Together, we can create something greater for Archer. During dinner, they eagerly absorbed Archer's enthusiastic account of his new school, his new friends, and his fascinating science project on black holes. At times, the effortless family dynamic seemed almost dreamlike to Violet. As if she could awaken from a dream at any instant. Yet, it was no mere illusion. It was an unexpected opportunity for all of them. An opportunity arising not from vengeance, but from the courageous decision to pursue truth and restoration instead. Once Archer had drifted off to sleep, Violet found herself seated on the balcony, gazing out at the quaint garden nestled behind their brownstone. Dexter approached her with a glass of wine, Chateau Margaux, their cherished classic. To new beginnings, he proclaimed, resonating with the toast from that pivotal dinner 3 months prior. Yet this time, the words radiated hope rather than concealed motives. To new beginnings, Violet said, clinking her glass against his. In the stillness of the evening, as the stars began to twinkle in the vast expanse above, Violet pondered the path that had led them to this moment. She arrived in New York with a burning desire for retribution, believing it would mend the scars of treachery. Instead, she discovered something far more potent, the strength to forgive not only Dexter but also herself. While revenge could have offered a fleeting sense of satisfaction for her anger, it ultimately would have rendered all three of them empty inside. Truth, justice, and the steady, deliberate effort of restoring trust had provided them with something that revenge could never offer. A future that inspires hope. Archer was surrounded by the unwavering love of his 2 devoted parents. Dexter was reclaiming his company and his legacy. At last, Violet had put to rest the bitterness that had haunted her for 8 long years. It was far from flawless. There were still challenging days, tough discussions, and instances when the hurt of the past emerged without warning. Yet they confronted them together now with transparency rather than concealment, with empathy instead of harshness. Ultimately, that became the most profound form of retribution. It was not about vanquishing her foe, but rather about crafting a life so exquisite that it transcended the bleakest visions of her most shadowy moments.